This is Talk with TAS, a radio experience hosted by Dr. Teresa A. Smith, a licensed counselor and professor focused on the transformative journeys of her guests and the lessons they've learned along the way. She's also an author, speaker, and nationally known social media personality. Join her now as she interviews newsmakers, artists, authors, and more. You will learn something new. This is Talk with TAS. Here's your host, Dr. Teresa A. Smith, also known as Dr. TAS.
Welcome. Today I am so excited. I have Evelyn Smith Booker. No relationship, but I wish I could say that we were related. She is a wonderful, wonderful person. Evelyn was the first African-American female to sell television for WRAL-TV in Raleigh, North Carolina. She is a trailblazer. She has done a lot of firsts, and today we're going to talk a little bit about her first and also gain some of the leadership knowledge that I think that you will find very helpful as you continue to as you continue to go down your path in life. Everybody has a path, and I think that Evelyn can help us to light our paths today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Evelyn, I'm just going to go ahead and share your book here, A Winner in Spite of. Evelyn, I've read your book and, I've been gushing off camera about your book. Tell us, what made you just write this book? What got you started in that?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer from when I attended North Carolina Central University and taught school for just a short period. I've always wanted to write. And when I had my second daughter, I said to my husband, I cannot leave this baby at 3 months like we did our first. As a female and giving birth, your body is not in shape physically to go back to a full-time job. So I stayed out with her for a year. And then after that year, I said, I wonder if I could go to WRAL-TV. I know that they would have writers. So I applied at WRAL-TV, and they had a part-time position open, which was exactly what I wanted. And at that time, they called it the production section. Now it's called creative services, but it's the same thing. They actually write commercials for the clients. So I interviewed, and the young lady was Cindy Sink. And after about 30 minutes, she said, oh, yes, we'd love to have you on staff. And everything else just started to turn in my favor. And I went on board and started writing. And after I'd been there for about 6 months, they had a position open in the sales department. I'd never sold anything in my life, but it was still as an assistant. So I applied for that and told them what I had been doing in creative services or production. And again, they hired me to assist the salespeople, the account executives, they call them. So again, there's something about 6 months in Evelyn Booker. So after being there for 6 months and working with the clients on behalf of the salespeople, when they were out, we would have to do make good. So if they had offered a schedule to a client, and let's say in the news, they said, we're going to guarantee you with this one spot in this newscast, you will reach 325,000 people. Well, if for some reason there was a disaster like 9/11 and we couldn't air their schedule as promised, then we'd have to do what we call make goods. So to make up the points to equal the dollars that they had purchased. So I was working with the salespeople and dealing with the Kentucky Fried Chickens and the Mercedes and all of those folks. And after a period of time, several of the clients wrote back and said they loved working with Evelyn Booker more than they did the salesperson. So a thought popped into my head, and the other assistant, whose name was Cindy, said, Evelyn, you ought to apply for a sales position. And I said, well, there's nothing open. She said, well, they can create something. She said, you've got as much education as those people. And she said, and look at the letters coming in from clients. So I thought, let me just try this. And sure enough, I wrote management a note saying listed are 10 reasons I could be and should be your next account executive. And as you well know, in every situation, somebody's being sold. So I sold them, and they created the position. And as they say, the rest is her story, history.
Evelyn, first of all, I know that you have a degree in English from North Carolina Central, but I didn't know that you had taught just a brief time here. So I can see how the English degree really helped you as you came on as I think it was the assistant copywriter at the TV station, because you understood the mechanics of writing. Now, in your book, you're like, now, who wants to diagram sentences? We don't understand why. I'm going to date myself. I'm going to date both of us, but we're really quite young. I can remember in middle school diagramming sentences, and I'm like, why are we doing this? I didn't understand it then. I still don't understand. But, again, it helped you to know the parts of speech. So, maybe that was the reason why, I don't know. But, I think about how you were being positioned at such a young age to walk into the role of sales manager, because when you retired, you were general sales manager.
Yes.
And now, for those who don't know what that means, explain what it means to be general sales manager for a TV station.
What that means is you have a local team and a national team, and then a regional, which means the local people will deal with all of our clients on a local basis. Used to be Al Smith, Buick, Dodge, Mazda of the world. Any local client. And then on a national scale, that would be the Mercedes of the world, the Chevrolets, the Toyotas. And then a regional would be somebody like Kentucky Fried Chicken, who has, several locations, or Chick-fil-A now. They're on the rise. Chick-fil-A's in certain regions. They're not local, they're not big enough to be national, but they're regional accounts. So you have a local sales manager who will handle all of your local account executives, and you can have anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, depending on your staff. And then you have the national, who will deal with all of the national accounts. And we will have offices throughout the United States. So I would make trips to New York and Atlanta and LA and San Francisco, Boston, all around DC. And the way they rank the markets would be according to the number of television households in that market. So Raleigh-Durham, for instance, where we sat at that time, was the 32nd largest market in the country. The number one largest market would be New York. The second would be LA. The third would be Washington, DC. And the ranks have probably changed somewhat now, but at that time, so my national sales manager would handle all of the national accounts, and we would visit the national offices, okay? As opposed to the local sales manager dealt with all of the local clients and all of the account executives. In addition to that, you would have a traffic department, and those people would actually, once a schedule is sold, you come back, enter it into your system, your computer system, and then a traffic department will log all of the commercials. So if you're watching television, you might see 2 30-second commercials and then a 10. And then you might see a 60-second commercial and 2 15s. So it's sold in increments. And the traffic department would log everybody's commercial, both local and national. And to give you for instance, when we sell the Super Bowl, okay, the national people will get 13 of those, and then our local team will get 13. It was split evenly. Okay. Now, everything is based on supply and demand. So the more people that watch a particular program, the more we can afford to charge. So on a national scale, you can get $3 million for a 30-second commercial. And on the local side, a 30-second commercial in that same Super Bowl would go for $100,000. Okay. because on the national level, and they had what they call road blocking. So you might turn to ABC and you'll see a Toyota commercial. You flip real quickly to NBC, you'll see that same Toyota commercial. You switch to ABC, all of them are running it at the same time. That means they're road blocking, which means they're getting as many eyeballs to see that commercial at the same time, because that will have more of an impact. And for the human being, it takes 3 times to see that same commercial to move them to action. So if you're looking for a new car and you see that commercial on ABC, CBS, NBC at the same time, that's gotten their reach. You know, we have what we call reach and frequency. You've gotten the reach that you need. And guess what? If that person is in need of a new car and Toyota is the last thing that they saw, they're going to, in all probability, if they like that line, get that kind of car.
And now, thank you, Evelyn, because I understood some of this, but I didn't understand all of it. But, you know, once you made the transition, you also had some $1 million months also. Now, tell folks what it means when you, and I may be saying it incorrectly, you had months where your sales department generated $1 million worth of advertisements, brought in $1 million worth of advertisement?
1 month, yes. Okay. Yes. So that was historical. And that was September. I still have the certificate. And that was one of the things that my editor and I disagreed on. I had those certificates where we had all of my team sign when we had that first $1 million month. Because I mean, that was huge. And I had a bell so that anybody that made a sale, I would ring the bell and everybody would come running, from research department to the creative services department to the general manager. They came running over to the sales department. Who made a sale? So the salesperson would have to get up and articulate exactly what they went through to get that order. So yeah, that was a big deal when we had that first $1 million month. So there were certain things that I wanted to put in the book. And she said, people will not be interested in that, Evelyn. They want the nuts and bolts. So we disagreed on some things, but you know, they were in the business. This was my first time writing a book. So some of the battles I let them win, and we'll see, you know.
Well, you know, you can always do another edition, the second edition, Evelyn.
Well, that's what a lot of you'll see some of the reviews, and that's what people are saying. They can't wait for my second book. In fact, Teresa, I lost 3 chapters when I was writing the book. My computer went down, excuse me, and I had not saved everything, and it took Best Buy 3 weeks to get out here to get my computer worked on, because we had the warranty with them. But anyway, when I never could retrieve them, because sometimes I would write and just sit at the computer and write. Sometimes I would actually handwrite things, and things would come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning. I would get up and try to ease out of the bed so my husband wouldn't hear me, and I'd write. So those chapters that I lost were actually in the computer, and I didn't have a handwritten copy. So I said, well, you know what? At this point, I'm moving forward. And like you said, that those 3 chapters can be included in my next book, if you will.
Absolutely. And I understand what the editor's saying, but you know, people are visual, and you know, this is your first book, and it's a wonderful book. But sometimes folks need to see the reality. I'm kind of getting your industry because it's not my industry, and to be able to see some of the things just brings it home. But everybody is different. So like you said, you let the editor win that particular battle. Now, I want to kind of walk us through some of the nuggets that you talked about. And I have ways that I think I'm going to do it. But as I told you, you know, sometimes I change things in mid-stride. The first thing I want to talk about is, as my jumping off, this idea of shifting perspective from I got to I get to. I got to embracing I get to. Talk a little bit about what that means.
Well, I heard this motivational speaker, and in fact, I brought him in to address my team. We would have a one-day session where everybody had to write what they were going to contribute to the team for that year. and more specifically for that quarter. So I had this motivational speaker come in, and he was international, but he lived here in Raleigh. So I was able to negotiate the price because, we're not paying what those people overseas would pay for him. But he talked, and that's how he began his motivational speech that day. He said he had been flying and had come in, couldn't wait to see his wife and two beautiful children. And they met him at the airport. And as soon as he landed, he gave them hugs and kisses. They were excited to see Dad and his wife. As soon as he got in the car, the first thing she said, "Now, John, today at 12 noon, little John has baseball practice. And at 4, Anna has piano lessons. So you've got to take them to both because I already have things scheduled." And he sat there and thought, now my excitement to seeing my beautiful wife and my lovely kids, that's almost an obligation. Mm-hmm. I don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. What if she just changed those words to say, I get to, and all of the positive connotations that come with that? I get to take little John to baseball practice means that I've got my eyesight, I can drive, I have a car, I have gasoline. God has gifted me with a son who can play and has all of those things. I have the activity of my limbs. I can come back home, rest for a few minutes. I get to take Anna for her piano lessons. That means she's gifted. She has her eyesight. She has dexterity in her fingers. The list goes on and on and on. I mean, it's endless. So when I get to, that's an opportunity that's been afforded me. I get to take them both and all of the positives that come with that. So if we could just shift our thinking from I gotta go to the grocery store. No, I get to go to the grocery store. That means I got money. I've got gasoline, all of those things that I just listed. Mm-hmm. And I can afford to get some food.
Yes.
I get to bring it back to my house. I get to stop and pump gas. Mm-hmm. Again, your list and my list would entail 100 things that I get to do. It's an opportunity, not an obligation.
And I like that, Evelyn, because to me, that marries so nicely when you talk about attitude later in the book and mm-hmm. how shifting our attitude really is so important. Because to me, what he was doing was making that shift. It was an mm-hmm. attitude shift. I got to do this. I got to do that. It's almost like that woe is me, but that's right. My attitude showing. But when it's, I get to do this, I get to take my niece to whatever, I get to go do this for my parents. As you said, it's an opportunity, and it's just shifting that attitude. And, I when I was reading, I thought, sometimes our attitude just seeps in, because you also talk about the way you put it, and I may not say it exactly right, but as I was reading things, you say about being careful who you're connected to because it's about the assimilation. Right. Now, other people say birds of a feather flock together, folks.
That's true.
It's the same thing, but it's said differently because you begin to take on their energy, their ways, their thinking. And so just shifting from I got to I get to, that your emotions just kind of open up. You're excited. It's not like I would say being put upon anymore. And right. So you can go forth and be successful. So when I was reading that, I was like, okay, then that was really sort of a primer for your work as a TV exec. Mm-hmm. And really, talking with you even more, I can see how you use just that one piece of advice, which is excellent advice, to shift how your team viewed their work.
Exactly.
How you keep them motivated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Don't come in with an attitude, I got to go to this meeting this morning. I get to go to this meeting, but everybody's going to share. We shared the positives of the week before. What kinds of negative things did you encounter? What did you learn from those things? And every situation, there's a learning, there's a life lesson. So when you get to exchange ideas, with 20 people sitting around the table. And that's the other thing. You could not come into my meeting late. Okay. No excuses. The excuses are only good for the people making them. So if my meeting is at 8 o'clock, I expect you to be here at 5 minutes till 8 so that we're starting promptly at 8. Because if you come in 5 minutes late and there are 20 people sitting around the table, now you're not just 5 minutes late. Production time, you're 5 times 20. That's 100 minutes, and that's an hour and 40 minutes. So it's not just you're 5 minutes late. You see what I'm saying? Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and thank you for saying that, Evelyn, because I so often, and even it happens with Zoom too, but especially when we were back in the brick and mortar, you're right. Someone comes into a meeting late. Mm-hmm. Well, you're up facilitating or sitting down, you're facilitating your meeting. Someone comes in late. The attention leaves you and goes to that person.
Precisely.
And, you know, you got to get people back to where you were. And that does take a moment sometimes. And sometimes it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to get us back because people have lost it now because of the distraction that's walked in the door. And it's like, you're right. Because you're right. That's 100 minutes that you've now just lost.
Right.
And then you got to get out of your meeting to go do your job. So no, because basically that person intentionally or unintentionally is sabotaging not only your meeting, but your accountabilities for that week, because you're right. They have now changed the mindset and the emotional intelligence of individuals, because then you're, as a manager, trying to make sure you keep everybody psyched up. You don't want other people to start doing this behavior that is not productive behavior, meaning coming in late. Right. So you're right. Just that one person really derailed the whole team's success.
Exactly. And when they come in, their attitude has a lot to do with what everybody else is going to start thinking. And they're huffing and puffing. They didn't go to the office to drop their briefcase off. They might be the next person on the agenda. So leave all of that. Leave all of that. Mm-hmm. Excuses are only good for the person making them. And I don't accept them. And they had to pay. So $1 for every minute that they were late. And at the end of the year in November, I took that money, and there was an accounting of everything. I took that money and we bought Christmas gifts for the angels on the tree. Mm-hmm.
Now, I tell you that I like that idea, Evelyn. Now, that somebody might run me out of town. You know,
no, they won't. You know what it means? Nobody wants to be late.
Nobody wants to be late, because and I love the fact that you guys donated to the angel tree. So that was gifts for children. But yeah, the fact that they're having to be accountable for being late. So $1 for every minute that they're late. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. I think that's such a good way of keeping us accountable for our behavior, because I'll start thinking twice, because if I'm 15 minutes late, that's $15. I won't be 15 minutes late too many times.
That's right. And that's the importance of establishing expectations. Mm-hmm. You have to establish expectations in order to manage those expectations.
Well, you know, Evelyn, you set a culture of excellence. And, you know, when you were talking, when we first started, you know, when you were 6 months, and I believe that everybody has numbers. And so I don't know if 6 is your number. I don't know if you ever thought about that. But
June I believe is my birthday. That's the 6th month of the year.
You're 6. 6 is your number, that divine number. And, you know, when you talk about 6 months, you was an assistant copywriter, then 6 months, you moved on up into an assistant. And then you moved on. But what I saw when you were talking about that was, I could see why you would move. I saw sincerity. I saw a calm demeanor, and of course, excellence and expertise. And I can see that being translated for the individuals that you were working with as you were climbing the ladder. So in other words, what are you saying, Dr. TAS? I can see as a vendor, as a business, I would feel comfortable with you. My people are going to feel comfortable with you. If Evelyn says it, that's what it's going to be. Right. You can trust her word. You know, she doesn't try to, I'm not going to use the phrase. she's a straight shooter. She's not trying to pull the wool over my eyes and promise me something that she can't deliver. She just tells it like it is. If I want us to do this, she's like, I don't think that's going to work for you. You guys, it worked for this particular company, but this is what their market is. This is what their product is. Your product is something different. I think you should consider doing this instead. To me, that sincerity, that calmness, that demeanor, knowing that they can trust you. Mm-hmm. I think that went a long ways in developing your skill set, as well as helping you to be such an effective manager. Now, one of the things that you talk about in the book is choice, and the fact that it's a powerful tool. And I look at the choices that you made. Mm-hmm. When I look at it, because I'm looking at it, after the fact, it seems like every choice that you made, it was the right choice. It continued to propel you to becoming a general sales manager. But as you were making those choices, did you feel that, because I know you consulted God every time, but mm-hmm. did you feel that the goals, your short-term and long-term goals, were too big to be achieved?
No, nothing is too big. You have to always reach for the stars, and never, ever, ever limit yourself. But the most important thing that you said there was, any decision that I make, no matter how big or how small, I consult God and I wait for the answer. In fact, when I wrote this book, the section on 30 years in television, I actually called the attorney, the corporate attorney, and sent that chapter to them for them to read, to make sure, because I had pulled some things from their website to make sure that I documented everything correctly. Because, documentation beats conversation any day. And I like to have things in writing, the old folks say to cover your, Yes. Mm-hmm. So when I sent it to her, she immediately read it and called me back and said, this is incredible. Do you mind if I share it with Mr. Goodman, who's the president and CEO at that time? And I said, by all means. So he read the chapter and he called HR and said for the HR director to call me and tell me he thoroughly enjoyed the chapter. Can't wait to read the entire book. But he would never tell me what to do and what not to do, but he would say, leave that part out about Laura. And I said, well, I didn't call a name. Mm-hmm. And I said, we had 3 female managers during my period there, so I didn't call a name. And she said, well, but everybody knows who it is. And I said, well, you tell Mr. Goodman, thanks for the advice, but I have to pray about everything before I make a decision.
Now, Evelyn, how can the audience get in touch with you or keep up with you?
Yes, my direct line is 919-621-5264 is my mobile. And if they want to purchase the book, just go to Amazon.com. And when the search button comes up, just enter a winner in spite of Evelyn Smith Booker. And it pops right up.
Well, guys, you've heard her. You can go to Amazon and purchase her book, A Winner in Spite of. It's there. I'm going to do my review. As I told Evelyn, this is a wonderful book. It's a must read for many different audiences. So you cannot go wrong. It's even for our younger folks, it's a good read for a lot of audiences. You can't go wrong grabbing Evelyn's book. So Evelyn, until next time, I hope you will come back and be with me in the kitchen. I've enjoyed our time together today. And thank you for stopping by to help us to understand that we can all win in spite of.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Talk with TAS with Dr. Teresa A. Smith. For more information on this show and Dr. TAS, you should visit AskDrTAS.com. That's AskDrTAS.com. Talk with TAS is a production of DQ Consulting, LLC. Dr. Teresa Smith, executive producer.